Welcome back, everybody. It's the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
The beloved fantasy master Lothario. I'm good, Bidon. Thank you. Oh wait, is the B and Bidon for beloved? Interesting. We'll discuss later. I I'm good, man. I had a terrible weekend of a very long bar mitzvah. So the Jews brought out all the stops this weekend for a bar mitzvah I went to, which was not appreciated.
They should have
by
put him on a pitch clock. I think that would have helped
Yeah.
speed
Oh
it
my
up.
God. Totally. Exactly. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. That's an automatic strike. You went to the Torah one too many times. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So anyway, not a great weekend, but I'm back here and I'm looking to enlighten your ears with my wonderful sounds of expertise.
That
Okay.
that sounds phenomenal, Gray. My weekend was basically golf and then watching the Avalanche win the Stanley Cup. It's the first time in a long time, so it was nice to see the Avalanche win. And now it's only baseball and golf for months. So if you don't
Wow.
like golf, then there's really only baseball.
I honestly had no. You wrote in the podcast outline, "Go Avs." I honestly had no clue what you were talking about. I was like, is he talking about avatars? Are we going to discuss
Are
the
we gonna promote?
Avatar? Or is it the new James Cameron movie that I am not looking forward to? What's going on? What's an Avs? I don't
Hey,
know.
if James Cameron wants to sponsor, I will gladly just love the hell out of Avatar 2 and just lie about it.
You could have. Oh man, it's too bad you already told me what Avs is because we could have had a fun little game where I would have guessed what you were talking about when you wrote "Go Avs." we we could have spent an hour and I still wouldn't have guessed it. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what?
Somehow the hockey season ends in June. That's just how it happens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wow. I thought hockey was over months ago. I I had no clue. Okay, go
Gray,
Avs.
Gray
Yeah.
does not write hockey. That
No,
is for
I
sure.
don't.
Um,
I didn't even know. I wow, I did not know that was going on. Okay,
but
so
if I
go ahead.
said sunflower seed box, though, you would know exactly what I was talking about,
Something
right?
now, if you said a David sunflower seed box throw by Rocio Iglesias, I would have been like, yeah, man, let's go. We squabbling out there. Yo, we squabbling. I was like, the funniest thing is probably a sidebar that I don't know if a lot of people about the Angels Mariners brawl. I'm not sure a lot of people like non-Twitter people like sometimes sometimes like you're not really on Twitter, but sometimes I'll mention a Twitter thing to a non-Twitter person. They'll be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. There's like a very specific like world. Like Twitter's like its own little world that there's like maybe like 12 people who tweet like 25,000 times. But anyway, so on Twitter, this woman, I guess, this Reds fan, last year, she went to a Cincinnati Reds game with her daughter, and the daughter was a huge Joey Votto fan, I believe. And last year, the game that she went to with her daughter, the Reds got into a big fight and Joey Votto got kicked out of the game, and it was like this whole thing on Twitter where this girl, like this 8-year old, say, I don't know how old she was, say she was 8 years old. This 8-year old was like super upset because her favorite player got kicked out of the game. Anyway, the Reds made it good, and they hooked Joey Votto up with the kid, and she got memorabilia or whatever. So anyway, so now on Sunday, the Angels and Mariners game is going on, and this this woman, this mother, brought her daughter, this huge Reds fan, to go see Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez at the Angels Mariners game. drove 2,000 miles to see them, and they lasted like literally like 2 outs. And the daughter, once again, is like bawling on Twitter, upset that her favorite players got kicked out of the game. I tweeted something like, I'm beginning to think that the daughter is the reason why the fight keeps happening. It's really, I mean, it's really like, it's kind of like, the idiom inside baseball. It's kind of like inside baseball Twitter. It's really not. I mean, it's not funny probably to 95% of the people that are listening, but it's really hilarious to me. Anyway, let's talk fantasy.
All right, let's talk some baseball, Gray. Starting with Cristian Javier. He had a great outing versus the Yankees. I mean, he's been great all season, but 7 innings against the Yanks, 13 strikeouts, no earned, one walk, 62 and a two-thirds innings this year, 2.73 ERA, 105 whip, a 31.8% K rate, 9.4% walk rate is on that very high end for as well as he's pitching and as low as his whip is currently. But Cristian Javier has been great, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. He was a guy who, like him and Tony Gosling, to group those two guys together, like they were really highly touted going into the 2021 season. Especially Gosling, but Javier as well. Like they were guys that everyone was clamoring to draft 14 months ago, and then for whatever reason, like they weren't bad last year. Like there was no like Javier. Unfortunately, Javier was mostly in relief, and Gosling was actually a starter. I think it was for like maybe 11 or 12 games last year. And then he was, in the minors, he bounced around a little bit. He was a guy who wasn't necessarily, thought of as being, that interesting coming into this year, along with Cristian Javier. And it was kind of weird because it was really like they were forgotten because they just hadn't really done it yet, but they were touted the previous year. And that was like, they were two guys that I was really, interested in for just about the entire draft season. And it was almost to the point where, like, I remember feeling like at a certain point, like I drafted Tony Gosling. I forget where, but let's say like 300 overall or something, like super late, like crazy late, like, off radars in 12-team leagues. And the same with Cristian Javier. I remember drafting him so late that I felt like almost like I was missing out on like news that like something had happened to them. Like it was almost like I felt like I had missed something that was like revealed to everyone else of why no one else was drafting these guys, because they were always supposed to be good. They just were lacking an opportunity. And then this year, obviously, they both had opportunities. Since we're talking about Cristian Javier specifically, like he was he was always a guy who it was a matter of whether or not he could command his pitches. Like it was always going to be whether or not like he had a fantastic slider, great fastball, good change, everything. Like he had plenty of pitches. It was just a matter of whether or not he could command them. And this year, what we've seen, like right now, his walk rate, his walk per nine is 3.5, which isn't elite necessarily, but it's better than where he was last year. Last year it was 4.7. So that might have scared some people off, but it was always a matter of whether or not he was going to be able to command his pitches better. And now that he can command them, a little bit better, because he didn't need to have like elite command. He didn't need to have like a 2.5 or lower walk per nine. He just needed to be, in the vicinity of decent for command, which he's become because his Ks were always really good. I mean, his Ks, last year and this year, both similar in the K per nine. This year it's 11.6. Last year was 11.6 as well. I mean, percentage points lower last year, but within margin of error. It was really like and he's not doing it with a 98.5 fastball or something. His fastball is good. Like I said earlier, I mean, he really like he's got good movement on it, but it's a 94 mile per hour fastball. The slider is really where he's able to do his most damage. And I think if anyone who saw him go into Yankee Stadium on Saturday and no hit the Yankees, I mean, I think they were able to see that, like, the slider bites so hard down and away on righties and into lefties' feet that it's just like it's hard to really it's hard to hit. And if he's able to throw it for as well as he has been, like right now, his expected batting average on a slider alone is 150. I mean, if you're throwing a pitch 30% of the time and you're getting an expected batting average of 150, it's hard to beat you, really. I mean, honestly, that's hard to beat because, worst comes to worst, you just go back to the slider and you just keep throwing it. And if no one's hitting it, and it's not like people are having much more success on the fastball. That's coming at a 190 expected batting average, and he's throwing that 60% of the time. So, you're looking at like two pitches that are at 90% of his pitches are under 200 expected batting average. I mean, that's really good.
Yeah.
To be quite frank here, I mean, that's ace, type material. So, also on a side note, I just remembered that we're recording this for video, and in the middle there, I started scratching my butt. So if anyone's watching this, just fast forward through when I'm scratching my butt. Don't look at that. Anyway, I think we're starting to see Cristian Javier and throwing back Gosling in there. Two guys that are really coming into their own as like fantasy aces. Javier, I think especially. Gosling right now is because regression hasn't really hit Gosling, so it's harder to say where he's supposed to be because he's not quite as good as he's shown. Obviously, I mean, no one is. I mean, he's throwing like as good as Gosling's been, and he hasn't been that bad. In general, he's also not a 1.58 ERA guy. So, just throwing that out there. I know this is mostly supposed to be about Javier, but, just throwing the Gosling thing out there. As much as I like Gosling, he's not this good. And I will go as far to say, like, if you're looking for a straight either or, Cristian Javier, even though it seems on the surface with his ERA that he might not be as good as Gosling, in reality, Cristian Javier is much better than Gosling. It's kind of not even close. Like, Gosling's good. Cristian Javier is excellent.
Yeah, I mean, Javier, just kind of the K rate alone, especially for our game, is telling the picture. And then you're right. I mean, Gosling has been lucky. He has a 90% left on base. He's got a 188 BABIP. I mean, there's definitely some regression coming for him and for Javier too. Probably he's probably not a necessarily a sub-3 pitcher this year with the walks. I think once the walks come down, if he can get that under control, he could become that kind of pitcher. I don't necessarily see that for the rest of the season, but yeah, so Cristian Javier has been great. You already said where you would take him versus Gosling. You said, you're obviously Javier. Would you have Javier or Mackenzie Gore?
It's a tough one. I think I'm going to go Javier. But yeah, that's a tough call. Gore has actually also been excellent. And both of them, by the way, over Gosling. Even though, like, it's like, I don't think anyone is, foolish enough out there to be like, trading Gosling for anything just because I'm saying like he should regress. Like, it's like you still have a valuable piece there. Like, just because Gosling's not supposed to be as good as he been, I mean, you still have a piece that you could probably get something decent. I wouldn't trade him for, Jonathan India for one guy who's just been awful. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I might trade him for Jonathan
I was
India.
gonna say I actually might do that if Indians,
Yeah,
can
that's
stay
just
healthy
like
for a week.
that's a classic trade high for a trade low. But yeah, no, I kid. Jonathan India is actually very awful, but hopefully he's better at some point. Anyway, yeah, I think I go Javier over Gore, but I don't know. That's close. What do you think?
I think I'm going with Javier over Gore just because of the innings. I think you know Gore's had all sorts of injury issues. This just getting back on track and seeing where he's at now is great to see. I think he's going to be a phenomenal pitcher, like he was always supposed to be. I mean, he's only 23, so like the sky is the limit for him. But he threw like 40 innings last year, 50 innings. I just don't think the Padres are necessarily going to push him. I think eventually he kind of slides into a long relief type of role for them and just kind of transitions out as a starter.
I know
So
this
that's the
wasn't.
one thing I would say.
I know this wasn't on our list to discuss. But speaking of Padres pitchers, man, Blake Snell, right? Like he has become the slapdick prospect that he was whatchamacallit, that he was famous for calling out the Rays about. I mean, he is just so awful. Oh God. I mean, he's terrible. And then he broke Bryce Harper's thumb. Like, that's not cool. I mean, I know he didn't do it on purpose. I like how Bryce Harper was like, "Oh yeah, Snelly," because every baseball player adds a Y to every other baseball player's name. Harper said about Snelly that he texted him, and I was thinking like, oh well. Texted him what? Like I'm terrible. I can't control my pitches. I'm so bad that I sorry I hit your thumb. Like oh my bad. Like oh you're awful, bro. Hey Snelly, you stink. Sorry, that was a side note. Okay,
It's
anyway.
fine. I mean, the fastball's just been awful for Snell. He can't control it. He can't control anything. But the fastball's just getting wrecked right now. How about him or Shane Bieber, who still doesn't have the velocity back, but he's been fine.
Yeah, for sure, Bieber. Oh yeah,
Okay,
hundred
so
percent.
like Bieber, Musgrove, you're still taking those guys over Javier. We're not to that point yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
no, definitely. Like Musgrove, I think I've mentioned it here. I've mentioned it on the site. I think I mentioned it in the buy, sell, hold videos. I think I've mentioned it everywhere. That Musgrove is notorious for having bad second halves. So I'm like trying to think when I should sell Musgrove, but I'm still taking Musgrove over Javier just because it's just a safety of a guy who's done anything resembling this before versus Javier, who's a little bit out of his depth. Not a lot, like we've mentioned already, but a little bit.
Yeah, that's completely fair. I think I could be convinced to do it if I can get another useful piece with Javier. I think they're fairly close rest of the season, but I'm with you. I think straight up it's still it's still Musgrove. Moving on, Isaac Paredes had a big week. 19 at bats, 5 home runs, 6 runs, 9 RBIs. For the season, he's hitting 255 with 10 home runs. Number 20 over the last 30 days at second base. Number 14 at third base over the last 30. And I say the last 30 because he didn't start with the club. So that's just little comparison of when he's been playing. Are you interested in Isaac Paredes as, kind of a middle infielder or maybe even potentially more?
Isaac Paredes or Jonathan India? Just give me anything but India. Uh, yeah, I mean, God, Paredes. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that like because Paredes for I want to say not that long ago, I was really interested in Paredes. Like maybe like when he was with the Tigers, roughly like 2 years ago. Actually, I guess last year he was with the Tigers. But I was interested, I think it was like 2 years ago, or actually 3 years ago now, like 2019. And he was only 20 years old in 2019. And now he's 23. That's how ages work, folks. In 2019 he had like a decent sort of contact year. Like he was kind of like a guy who was good for his hit tool. He was a 60 grade hit tool guy. He was a low. I mean, right now in the majors through 34 games, he has a under 14% strikeout rate. That's elite. And at no point in the majors, no point in the minors did he really balloon out of control for any extended period of time. He was always able to sort of like control his strikeouts and walk a decent amount. Like not amazing, not elite necessarily, but good. He's a guy who's like, I feel like probably overperforming as far as power, unless he's grown into more power, which is totally possible. Like, growing into power happens. He is probably, to throw out another guy, I would say probably like 15, like in all things being considered, I think he's probably like a 15 to 17 homer 270 hitter, which isn't bad. I mean, possibly upside from all those numbers, possibly maybe hit for a better average, maybe, like I said, maybe he's growing into more power. The big issue is he has absolutely no speed. So at best he's like a 20 homer 280 hitter, which isn't bad. I mean, that's usable. At this point, I would take that from Jonathan India. If Jonathan India is listening to this podcast, oh, please do something, bro. Do anything. I just benched you for Miles Straw in one league. That's sad.
Yeah,
okay?
that's not good either.
Miles Straw has been awful.
Yeah, Straw's not. I think he actually just got demoted to the bottom of the lineup too. So not great.
Yeah, exactly. You ever tried to use a straw from the bottom? Doesn't work. Okay. All right.
Wait, wouldn't that actually work though, Greg?
I think Paredes is probably a hot potato for right now, with maybe like deeper leagues. I mean, for an AL only league, you sort of hit the jackpot if you have a guy like Paredes. But for most like a 15 team mixed league, Paredes is definitely rosterable for right now. I don't love how Kevin Cash platoons everyone, so we'll have to see with playing time. But yeah, for shallower leagues, I think Paredes is worth rostering in every league right now because he's hot. But in shallower leagues, I could see possibly moving on once the hot streak sort of ends.
Yeah, I don't think his power, even if he's grown into some more power, I don't think it's, game-changing levels of power. I think this was a nice, week that we'll kind of forget that it happened in a week. And when we're thinking about Paredes next year, maybe it helps build a better profile for him. But, I would say like 20 home runs is probably his what we're looking at here. I was thinking about kind of the person he might end up like Brendan Rodgers type production. A decent average, 20 home runs. Not
Are
really
you saying Brandon Rodgers in Coors or Brandon Rodgers outside of Coors?
Does it really matter anymore?
Yeah, it does a little bit, at least for Rodgers. Also what's interesting, someone mentioned it in the comments this morning, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was, but shout out to person I don't remember. There was something about like how the Rays prospects are just like so like hit or miss, and mostly miss recently with the bats. Like Brujan, we were expecting a lot from Brujan. Josh Lowe, we were expecting a lot from. Wander's been good. More or less. I mean, he's been out for a while, so it's hard to put anything on that. Jonathan Arenado was up, and then he got sent back already. Walls is hitting a little bit, but it's just interesting that like the guys who you're not expecting, the Isaac Paredes of the world, are like that's the guy who's like hitting versus the guys, we've been expecting Bruhan and Lowe, especially for like, so long now that it's like, oh yeah, Paredes almost feels like an afterthought that's getting a bit of, he's getting almost like he's being thought of in a negative light because of the other guys where it's like, I mean, he's not, they're not the same players, and the Tigers more or less were the ones who developed Paredes. So yeah. Anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that. Yeah, cut that piece out of the YouTube video too. Don't put that in there. Hey, anyway, so people who are listening, we're now on YouTube, kind of youtube.com/Rasball Fantasy. Donkey Teeth has been telling me to say this every show. So that's why you heard that. Okay. Anyway, back to B Don. Sorry, B Don.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, I mean, Paredes is like, he's 23. He's not old by any means, but he definitely feels like there was some prospect fatigue because he came in so early. He was 17. He's been through 3 organizations. So it's just like, is he gonna develop? Is he not? And to your point of top prospects kind of struggling and then some like lesser guys, it's kind of like what the Cardinals seem to do regularly, where like their top prospects come up and might struggle, but pull some random no-name guy that'll do perfectly fine, or they'll have Tommy Edman put a career year together, and then that's that for them, and it kind of works out. But I think there's something to the platooning where, like, at some point you just need to let the young guys hit every day just so they can have that kind of time. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. Let's talk about rest of the season. I mean, let's start with Rodgers. Would you have Rodgers or Paredes?
I'd still go Rogers.
Sure.
Yeah, just because of the course. I think if I don't know. Neither guy are exciting me that much to be totally honest. I mean, if Paredes, had speed, I'd be more interested. Yeah, I mean, he's a hot bat, I think, more or less. And Rogers, while Rogers hasn't been amazing, he's been at least decent in cores, and yeah, I don't know. And he feels like at this point Bud Black is playing Rogers, so he's not going to lose a starting job. That's saying rest of the season, which is so hard to say with both of these guys. Like I'm like when you say rest of the season, and this goes for people who comment too on the site. Like when someone says rest of the season, I'm thinking like, well, you got to figure in like how stable is this guy's, everyday job. So runs and RBIs are going to factor in where is he going to sit in the lineup? Like, is there going to be other guys above him always? So yeah, I'd probably go Rogers just because he feels a little bit safer, but I don't really like either.
Yeah, that's fair. I might actually go with Paredes just in shallower leagues, just if we're kind of swapping in middle infielders. Again, just because I feel like he's playing well right now. He's hot, and for what it's worth, he has a 203 BABIP. BABIP's not an all knowing number, but 203 is definitely on the lower end, even for somebody as speed deprived as Paredes is. It should be a little bit higher. So while he is hot right now from a power perspective, I do think the average could potentially even kind of level off here at 255, 260, maybe in some room for growth there. How about him or Chris Morel, who's stayed kind of with the Cubs and stayed at the top of the order for now?
Yeah, I go Morel just because he's got some speed and he's sitting on the top of while a weak lineup. At least Morel has been sitting on the top of the Cubs lineup for more or less for the last week. More or less. Woo!
All right. How about one more? Javier Baez, who we were talking about people dropping him a few weeks ago. He's kind of turned it around since the start of June a little bit. 260, 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases.
Yeah.
Javier Baez or Isaac Paredes?
Actually, speaking of how we were saying Javier Baez was a drop a few weeks ago, Jonathan India, he's a drop, okay? Drop him, guys. Listen, hey, guys, 5 girl listeners, drop India, this way he can be good for me, please. I'm going Baez over Paredes. I don't think that's actually that close. I would go Baez over Paredes pretty easily.
All right, fair enough. I think that's the same for me. I mean, if Baez just starts seeing the ball, we know what kind of power speed numbers he can put up, even if the average isn't going to be great. And we're not really sure where Paredes is going to land on average, anyways. Edward Olivares is brought up. I don't know if there's really a whole lot of shallow league implications here. But what do you think of Edward Olivares? He started out well. He's got a couple of homers, couple of stolen bases across 18 games, and he's hitting well right now. It may be a little buoyed by the 412 BABIP, but what are you thinking here?
I just made a bet. I just did a bet MGM that if I count to 10, and by the time I get to 10, I put $5 down that Alvarez would be sent down again by the Royals. Let's see. Let's see if it happens. But come on, man. I want to win one of these bets. You know what? I like Alvarez a lot. I don't like saying his name that much because I'm probably really butchering it, but I like him a ton because he's got power and speed. Honestly, I don't know why the Royals aren't just playing him. I mean, the fact that the Royals are playing like Michael A. Taylor for like 600 at bats is just like, honestly, nothing could be funnier than that. Like, why would you play Michael A. Taylor at all? I mean, he's 31. Michael A. Taylor's 31. And obviously, everyone knows what you're getting from Michael A. Taylor, which is nothing. You're not getting anything. Like, why would you play that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I don't know why you'd actually play Benintendi either, but I mean, at least Benintendi's sort of decent, I guess, from a real baseball perspective. But anyway, yeah, Alvarez is he's a bench bat right now for the Royals. So you can look at him in deeper leagues, but he doesn't have everyday playing time. So as of right this second, I mean, he's fine in a deep league to take a flyer on, but I didn't even look to see if he was available in like our RCL league, which is a 12-team mixed league. I didn't even look. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for the record, I should also say that when I said he wasn't really shallowly relevant, it wasn't because the power speed couldn't play. It's because he's not playing enough for them. When he does play, he is hitting in the middle of the order, which is great. But if they're only going to play him once every 3 or 4 days, it's really hard. They're only playing. They're strictly platooning him, playing against lefties only. So if that changes, I'm interested. But for now, I think in shallow leagues, you got to wait. Maybe in daily, you can kind of play with that last bench spot and have him up when he's playing, because he does obviously hit well when he's playing so far this year.
Yep.
Just when we thought Jose Berrios might have been figuring it out to start last week, we were thinking, okay, now we're going to get the value out of Berrios we've been waiting on. Just Berrios me at wounded knee here. I mean, he just buried all of us, Gray. Should I just drop him and just not have to deal with this nonsense anymore? Is that
Jose Berrios can really he can go screw himself. Like I hate him. I literally hate him. Like I am so mad at Jose Berrios that I'm angry. I'm angry. Listen, man. This is the difference. So here's the difference between having like a terrible hitter and a terrible pitcher. Like in a league where I have Jonathan India, have I mentioned him yet this podcast? In a league where I have Jonathan India, he's given me like 0 for 20s and doing nothing. And I'm in first place in that league because I have a lot of other things. I have hitters, I have pitchers, I have stuff that's working. But in a league where I have Jose Berrios, I'm in last place. It's awful. I mean, it's like, what am I doing? Like, it's just miserable. It's a deep league, too. So it's not like I can just say, okay, later, like I have to hope he gets better, but he's not getting better. If anything, he's getting worse. And honestly, by just looking at his numbers, I, it's weird because his velocity is fine, but if you look at his Ks and his like expected ERA and stuff, like he's a mess, bro. Like he is a total mess. Like he's like I think I said this I think I said this like a month or so ago, maybe 6 weeks ago on the site that like I was calling him Jose Brokios. And he's broken. I mean, he's broke. It's like he might be fixable in the off season, or maybe like something miraculous happens during the All-Star break or something, but he is broken. Like you can't like unfortunately in the one league where I have him, it's a deep league, so I'm like I have nothing to lose. I'm in last place, like I said. I have nothing the life has been depleted from my body. It's like I am gone. I have nothing left to give in that league. So I am starting him and I'm rolling him out there and I'm getting killed every week. And it's like, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter at this point for me. But if you still have a chance and you have Jose Berrios, get him off your team, man. Like, there's no point in having him on your team. Like, even if he gets better, his better is like what? A 3.75 ERA? Who cares? Find it off of waivers. Like, seriously, get him off your team. Honestly, goodbye.
Yeah, and he's like throwing, and I don't know if it's a new pitch or he's just lost his curve so much that like it just comes out terrible. But like he's throwing this new like curveball slash slider, and it's just getting demolished. I mean, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know why he would change after like having a career year last year. Like I don't it doesn't make sense to me. He just needs to find his curveball from last year and just throw that again. But that may be the problem. Maybe he can't find it right now, and that's just what's going on. But yeah, maybe just run away and save yourself if you're in a league shallow enough that you can just stream pitchers. Because, good Lord, it's been awful. Really
Yeah,
thought
I
last
mean,
week.
I have,
I really thought he was trying.
like my league is so deep, I can't do nothing about it. But if I'm like 14 team and shallower, I'm dropping Jose Berrios. I mean, you can find better. You can stream until someone like sticks. Like, like you could have done like Dylan Bundy last week. This week it's like, I think I forget who are good streamers this week, but you can look at the Streaminator and find better pitchers than Jose Berrios. Like, it's like there's no reason to put up with this. Ross Stripling is better than this. I mean, come on, dude.
Oh, not
It's like,
close.
yeah, it's not close, right? And Ross Stripling's available in like 75% of leagues. Like, come on, man. Like, move on, bro.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of moving on, let's move on here. Let's go to Michael Harris the second. We've talked about him a couple times as a pickup. If he's still out there miraculously, you have to go get him. But I don't think he's out there in many leagues. They're still active. I mean, now we just have to talk about whether he's going to continue this or is he a buy, sell, hold? I mean, he's hitting 330, 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. He looks great, Gray. He's getting good contact. He's Everybody on the team is saying great things about him, blah, 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 blah. Where are you at on Michael Harris? I mean, he looks phenomenal.
Yeah, no, completely. He was actually a guy who I grabbed in a couple leagues for pretty cheap for on Fab, and he was a guy who I actually wasn't even playing for like a couple weeks. Like when he first came up, I had grabbed him and then I benched him because I had other options that, like a Miles Straw, for instance. I had other options that I thought were better. And Michael Harris, the second, we're on the sequel now. He's been better than a bunch of my actual outfielders. So he's moved into my everyday starting outfield like pretty easily too. Like he's been great for I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks now. Like he's been really good. So his BABIP is a little bit high. His Ks are a little bit high. I think, he's hitting 330 as of the recording of this. He's probably closer to like a 265 hitter, 270, which isn't bad. I mean, that's totally usable still. It kind of sucks that the Braves have never, well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's on Snicker necessarily that the Braves haven't moved him up in the lineup. They have a pretty stacked lineup, even without Ozzy Albies. Like they've managed to get enough guys. So Michael Harris, dose is probably right to be batting like 9, more or less every day. If he can move up to leadoff, I mean, oh my God, fantastic. But I mean, they have Acuna. It's kind of, they have Swanson. I don't necessarily see it happening. So Harris probably hitting 9th for real world baseball. It probably makes sense. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to change anytime soon. I do like him still though. So in shallower leagues, a guy who's batting 9th, it's not the greatest. It hurts with counting stats. So because Acuna and Swanson are more or less batting behind him for after the first time through the order, then he's still getting a decent amount of counting stats due to that. So he's been decent as far as that goes, and he's good for power and speed. Like Michael Harris, dose is a good solid probably 12 to 15 homer, 25 plus steal guys. So that's really valuable. Like that's kind of like, that's top 75 overall type numbers, prorated over 162 games. He's not going to do that this year. I'm saying if he were to have 600 at bats starting in April. But yeah, I mean, if he could get anywhere close to, he could be the kind of guy who could, like we saw with John Birdie, he could steal 12 to 15 bags in a month, like Michael Harris the second, that is. So I like him a lot. I'm a big fan. I think there could be issues with counting stats because where he bats in the lineup, but other than that, I'm a fan for sure. I like him.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, he's been just great. There's really nothing that he could really do to kind of make it look better. I mean, he's done everything he can. I will say over the last 30 days, he's the number 16 outfielder. So at least for, that small sample size. And as you mentioned, having Acuna and Swanson hitting behind you, even though you're hitting 9, is not necessarily the worst thing. So yeah, he's still managing to put up enough runs and RBIs to matter in that area. And I think the speed will play. So everybody needs steals these days. So I think he's pretty much rosterable in every format, even though he's hitting 9th. And I don't really see him moving up, unfortunately, unless there's a Dansby Swanson or a Acuna injury, which please do not happen. Please, Lord, please don't let either of those people get injured. No, please. But that's the only way I really see it, because Acuna has complained about not he loves hitting 1. He wants to hit 1, so he's not going anywhere. So the only other place is 2 where Swanson's at.
Our podcast is 95% fantasy baseball, 5% prayer. Just please don't
stay up on 2 legs. Well, yes, please.
Please don't get hurt. Oh man, God, I'm begging you. Please let Jonathan India hit and let Acuna stay healthy. Just nothing else matters, Lord.
All right. Hopefully this next person isn't injured. It's just a little blip in the radar. But Nestor Cortes, he's had some June struggles here. 4.15 ERA in June. I mean, he was sub 2 ERA in the other 2 months. K rate's down some as well. I don't think I've ever said this in my life as far as pitching goes, but I think a little bit of the added velocities hurt him. The fastball and slider are not dropping as much, and he needs the drop more than the velocity at where his fastball range is. Are you worried about Nestor, or is this just kind of, like I said, just a little blip that he'll figure out?
Yeah, that's actually, I mean, that's pretty good. That's a pretty smart observation with him, because it's kind of like with a knuckler, like you don't want to throw it too fast. Like you want to do the dipsy doodles. You don't want to see a guy throw it too fast, because then it's like it kind of gets into a straight line, and a hitter can hit it better. So yeah, I mean, honestly, that's I don't have too much to add. I think he was getting hurt in his last couple starts because his command was a little bit off, and it led to the ball being more over the plate than he had been. Like he was, he was for a while his O swing, which is the percentage of batter swings on pitches outside the strike zone, is really good. It was really high. It's come down a little bit in the last couple starts because he's just been more over the plate, which isn't necessarily the best thing for him. Like he's going to live and die on how deceptive he is, and he just hasn't been as deceptive. And it could be like you said, because he added like a mile on his fastball, and he's grooving it essentially, which isn't good. But I like him still in general. I just think, he was never going to be a under 2 ERA guy. Like he could be really valuable as like a 3.5 ERA pitcher with a 9.5 K per nine, having the occasional, like getting hit occasionally. He's still a solid pitcher to have on your fantasy team. He's just not necessarily, he was never going to be as good as April May. He won't be necessarily bad either. He's a solid, I would say he could be anywhere from like the ace he was in April and May. You're probably going to be closer to like, what you're seeing now, where he goes like 6 innings, gives up 3 runs, and has like, maybe 7 Ks or something. It's not bad though, but it's not quite where he was in April and May.
Yeah, and just to kind of talk about the Ks, I mean, in April he was at 36% K rate. In May he was 26.6. In June he was 22%. So I mean, we're talking about a very large gap. That's going from a over 12 K per nine to an 8.3 K per nine. That's a huge difference in what's happening with the ball. And it, as weird as it is, like I said, I think it's the added velocity, because going from 91 to 92 is not fooling anybody from a velocity standpoint, but losing that inch or two of break, which moves it from the corner to outside middle, that's big. So yes, I am a little bit worried about Nestor. And as you mentioned, he was never going to be full ace. I just don't think that was really ever in the cards for him. But I do think he'll do better than the 4+ ERA he's had in June. Just needs to figure everything out again. And you saw this with like Johnny Cueto, who would lose kind of the feel and like the control sometimes because he would get into so much deception. And then he figured it out, and then everything would kind of get back in order. Although Cueto, I think, probably had better stuff if we're just talking just the raw pitches.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty apt comparison. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of another pitcher who's just had an awful June, Eric Lauer has been lousy. A 6.94 ERA, K rate way down below 16%. We've kind of seen this from Lauer before. I'm legitimately concerned with Eric Lauer.
Lowry.
Lowry.
Lowry. Yeah, I mean, we kind of knew this was coming a little bit, right? I mean, this isn't totally shocking when a guy who is more or less a iffy pitcher his whole career suddenly becomes like, great. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think he's still probably better than he was like way back, like when he was like a 4.5 ERA guy. He's not. Last year he was a 3.19 ERA guy. I don't think he was ever that. I think I think he's always been like a 4 ERA guy, and he's just sort of like bouncing between the two, where like he was never as bad as the 4.5, and he was never as good as whatever he was in April and May, which was insane, whatever it was, like under 3. I think he's probably usable still. I'm not like, I don't feel like he's completely like, well, I guess it depends on the leagues. Like in a RCL 12-team mixed league, yeah, I mean, he's probably droppable. And he's also got RCL in his name right there, Eric Lauer. It's RCL. Wow, huh? That's interesting. Wow, my brain just went to sleep for a second. Anyway, I think Lauer is like, he's probably a streamer in a 12-team mixed league, but deeper leagues, you might have to play the matchups a little bit, but I think he's probably going to be usable for most teams in like a 14 team and deeper league. I think he'll be okay. Maybe not great. And if you were expecting great, I mean, honestly, your expectations were all out of whack. I mean, what is wrong with your expectations? You're the problem, high expectations guy. I mean, come on, man. So yeah, I don't mind Lauer. I just think you gotta like rethink your expectations.
Yeah, don't be like me and tell Rudy he needs to adjust his projections because they're not adjusting Eric Lauer fast enough. That's not how you do that. That's not how it goes. You listen to Rudy and you let him do his thing, because the numbers will play out more often than not. You know what he reminds me of, Gray? He reminds me of like early in his career, like Trevor Bauer. Like, he has a number of pitches. He can throw all sorts of different angles. He can do whatever he wants. And sometimes the mix is really wrong and bad things happen. And then sometimes it's on right and he looks really good. And I feel like that's how Eric Lauer's going to be until he figures out the right mix.
Yeah. Well, that's a blast from the past. I haven't thought about that guy in a while. remember when he played baseball? Honestly, I don't have Trevor Bauer's numbers in front of me because he hasn't played baseball in like 18 months. But I think he threw harder than Lauer.
He did. He always had like better stuff. Like,
right.
He was always playing with his pitch mix. Like, it was never just like he's a fastball slider changer. Like, he has 12 pitches and he decides which 12 he wants to throw each game. Yeah. And I feel like Lauer's kind of like that, where he just moves his slider, his curve, and he does whatever he needs to, but then they get out of whack and start getting hit.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair. Yeah, I'll accept that. Okay.
They're tinkerers.
Yeah, the tinkerers.
Never good. All right, moving on. Speaking of somebody who's maybe tinkered in the right direction, and that's Mitch Keller. He picked up the sinker, ditched the four-seamer, stopped listening to the Pirates, and he has a 2.82 ERA in June. I mean, I'd much rather roster Mitch Keller at this point than Eric Lauer. Are you in on Mitch Keller rest of season, or is this one of those like spring training blips that he's going to blow us up here soon, and we're going to get a Jose Berrios style 2-start week?
No, with Mitch Keller, I think he's got a narrative that I'm willing to get behind, because like Clay Holmes supposedly taught him a sinker over the phone. Clay Holmes on the phone is better than a Pirates pitching coach in person, by the way.
100%.
Just putting that out there. But supposedly he taught a sinker to him. The sinker that has been so effective for Clay Holmes, he told Keller how to throw it, and it's been effective since he talked to him. I don't know if that's going to continue, but for now, the sinker is getting a 33% put away rate. It's good it's working for him. I don't, like I said, I don't know if it's going to continue. I am right now cautiously optimistic on Mitch Keller. I grabbed him in a pretty deep league, 15-team mixed league. That is, it's probably, I would say it's fairly active. So, and he was, it was like maybe 2 weeks ago that I grabbed him. So I didn't, and I don't necessarily know if I'm going to hold on to him, but Drew Rasmussen got hurt, so I had a space, so I grabbed Mitch Keller, and he's been fine. He's been decent. I didn't even look to see if he was available in a 12-team mixed league. I wouldn't look at him there. I mean, even good Mitch Keller is still like barely an 8K per nine. His command is a little wonky at times. He pitches for the Pirates. Like, there's a lot of things going against him. So I'm not completely sold that he's like the shallowest of leagues type pitcher, but in a 15-team mixed league or deeper, yeah, I mean, I could see the flyer.
Yeah, and I'm even fine. You know, I'm fine going with the streaming in shallow leagues with him, even though there is that blow up possibility with him. But yeah, I think you're right. I think in shallow, he's not necessarily a roster and hold, more of a stream. But you know, if you're sitting in a deeper 12 or 14, 15, I can definitely see potentially holding on to him and see if he can continue this work with the sinker. It's not been pristine. He's not been like absolutely clean with it, but I mean, he's been a lot better in the movement on the primary pitch. I mean, that's great to see.
Whoa. Sorry.
Professionalism, great professionalism.
We have a very professional podcast here.
All right, let's talk about Jarren Duran. He's
Not now, Mom.
he's gotten called up and sent back down and called up and sent back down. I'm hoping at this time he's here to stay, but he's performed very well every time he's gotten the call up. He's running right now. I believe he has 4 stolen bases in the last 2 weeks, which is just, I mean, from a stolen base perspective, he's not John Birdie, but that's about as good as it gets otherwise. I mean, Jarren Duran, is this a must add for the speed? Are we kind of in the Michael Harris area, maybe below Michael Harris? Because he's probably not going to bring quite the power maybe that Harris has, but he might have a chance to move up the lineup a little easier, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, with Duran, my biggest issue with him is whether or not, like, what are they doing with Enrique Hernandez when he returns? I mean, he's going to return at some point, so that's really my biggest concern with Duran. If he were like, if they committed to him, I'm a huge fan, because if anyone who's actually watched him run, like, he's got like 50 steal speed. He is so fast. Yeah. He's easily like one of the top like sprint guys, I would imagine. I haven't even looked it up. I mean, just the eye test alone, you see him and you're like, yeah, he's really fast. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if he could steal 50 bags. And he's also got a little bit of power too. He's not completely useless when it comes to power. Like, he's not straight Sagnoff. He could he could homer maybe 7 to 12 times in a full season, like across 162 games. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm grabbing him everywhere for right now because, like, honestly, in what league do you not need speed? I need steals everywhere. I don't know about the people listening, but I need steals in every league. So I'm grabbing Duran anywhere I can. I don't know what the Red Sox plan on doing once Enrique comes back. I would guess Duran stays up and platoons with Jackie Bradley Jr. or I don't know, man. Like, they've been so weird about Enrique Hernandez being an everyday leadoff guy. Like he's blackmailing Cora with nude pictures of someone. I don't know what's going on. Like, Enrique Hernandez to me is fine, but he's not a everyday leadoff guy. I mean, it's crazy that he has been for the Red Sox for going on for a while now, ever since he's been on the Red Sox. So I don't think that's changing. It's not like Duran is, supplanted Enrique, I don't think. So I like Duran, but I just don't know where the playing time is going to be necessarily in the next, week or so. Like, whenever, I don't even know when Enrique is coming back. I'm assuming soon. I saw something. I think he's going to rehab. I don't know.
Yeah, I actually saw he had a potential setback. I think that was a week ago, though, so that might have been that may be meaning he's going to rehab now rather than last week. But yeah, that's the one question is, will he maintain his spot? I mean, I think if we see him cover center field, which he seems to be doing just fine, by the way, I don't see why Jackie Bradley Jr. needs to play every day if he's going to cover center. Like the rest of the outfield in Boston isn't that hard. You can play the rest of the outfield in Boston if you're. I mean, JD Martinez played right field in left field. Like anybody can play those. So I really don't see why he couldn't stay in it. I mean, it's not like Enrique Hernandez has some kind of OBP master. Like his best OBP year is like 337. Like that's really not that good for a leadoff that like you have to have him there. That's almost as bad as Jaron Duran's current average. So like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about Jake Myers real quick here as he's taking a starter
Myers,
here?
you're right. Yeah, Jake Myers was he recently came back from injury. He's now I think he's an everyday outfielder, I think, for the Astros. I liked him kind of in the preseason a bit because he's like I think I probably compared him to a poor man's Michael Brantley because I compare
Everybody in that organization,
every young Astro player to a young Michael Brantley because that's what they're developing. I mean, they're developing 17 homers, 7 steal, 275 hitters. Like that's what they're doing. I don't mind it. I mean, it seems fine from a real world perspective, at least. From a fantasy perspective, it's a little bit boring, but Jake Myers is right now, I think he's still 15 team. Like if you're really struggling in a 15 team league for anything in the outfield, potentially Jake Myers. For now, he's probably AL only, maybe 15 team mixed league. So it's like he's borderline only AL only. Only. But yeah, I think he's he's worth monocling. I think he's someone who you could like keep an eye on and be like, okay, yeah, let's see what he's able to do if he has everyday playing time. Which he does right now. And that's because of I think Michael Brantley. Oh no, Michael Brantley's actually healthy. Yeah, Jake Myers is got everyday playing time right now in center field. So yeah, I mean that's something. Like that's worth watching because he's potentially in a 15 team mixed league, he can get on that radar as fast as like Isaac Paredes did earlier, like last week. Paredes was nothing like 10 days ago, and he got on like mixed league radars real fast. So I would watch Jake Myers, see what happens, but yeah, probably just like a watch and wait at this point.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think you were AL only. He's already probably been scooped up because if they're starting in AL only, they're added to a roster. But yeah, I think he's worth monitoring in pretty much every other league. He does have a little bit of power speed, and power always plays up in Houston as a righty, so that's working in his favor definitely. And I think the speed, he could steal 5, 6, 7 bases the rest of the way if they let him run at the bottom of that lineup. That's probably the biggest concern is that he's not moving up anytime soon. Because if anybody gets injured, they just kind of slide everybody up because everybody's the same hitter.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Gray, let's talk about some bullpen here before we close down the show with some waivers. There's Aroldis Chapman coming back this week. I mean, Clay Holmes has been phenomenal, but do you think he goes back to high leverage with the occasional save? And Aroldis gets immediately put back in? Are we looking at like a lead time for Aroldis? Is it a potential righty-lefty split? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, no, I think Chapman's definitely a bit the closer, unfortunately, because I do have Clay Holmes in a bunch of leagues. I think Clay Holmes will be worth rostering though everywhere, as long as he continues doing what he's doing, even if he isn't getting saves. I think he might actually end up, like if he moves to the 8th inning, he could end up getting like 8 to 10 wins. I mean, he's gonna be a top 100 overall guy on the player rater, even if he's not getting saves. He's going to be totally worth rostering. Unfortunately, I think with Aroldis Chapman, if he's healthy, he's going to be the closer because, I mean, think about like, can you imagine Aroldis Chapman not pitching in the ninth inning and pitching with the Yankees. I can't imagine him pitching in the eighth inning. I don't know. Maybe my imagination isn't as good as I thought it was, but I can't imagine it. So yeah, I think Clay Holmes takes a little bit of a hit as far as saves go, but he's still going to be valuable. So for now, I would hold both of them for sure. I mean, Araldo's obviously, and Clay Holmes I would continue to hold even if he's not getting saves.
Yeah, I mean, Holmes was the number one relief pitcher on the player radar even before Chapman's injury, so he
Yeah.
definitely has value even without Chapman. And then they're definitely going to still give him save opportunities. It's not like he's going to be completely erased from the saves picture. There's really no reason sometimes to pull him the way that he looks. I mean, he like 8-9 pitches innings and just gets out of there. So yeah, absolutely. How about the A's? We have the injury to Danny Jimenez. And then any other situations you're monitoring, Gray?
Yeah, no, I think with the A's, I don't know, Trevino. I mean, Trevino always made the most sense to me because, like, you want to build up his trade value, so you give him some saves and maybe you can trade him or something in July. I don't know. He's useless though in general. I wouldn't roster an A's closer at this point. I mean, Danny Jimenez was pretty good, and it probably burnt me because I was off of him because it was just the A's, and I was like uninterested because of that. So I was like, I was probably like, too harsh on Danny Jimenez when he was healthy, but now that he's not healthy, I'm not interested in any A's closers. Even if AJ Puck, I think, is probably the best guy there, but even if he gets the job for the rest of the year, he's what, a 7 save guy like the rest of the way? Who cares? It's awful. Forget it. Honestly, forget it. Sir Anthony Dominguez, Sir Anthony, the Hannibal cannibalizing the saves in Philly. I think he could potentially be a great pickup. So, don't take my awful Silence of the Lambs puns for making light of him. I think he could be really good. I would grab him in every league. Sir Anthony Dominguez, I think, is probably the top pickup for closers right now. In Cincinnati, Hunter Strickland, I think, got a couple saves. Maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't mess with him either. I honestly, life's too short. Unless it's like an NL only league, I probably wouldn't mess with him.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, the Cincinnati bullpen has been a bit of a mess this year, but he has gotten, I believe, their last 2 saves out of the last week. So it seems like maybe they're saying he's closing. That they went ahead and gave the manager speak of he's a guy who likes closing games, and maybe he's just better in the ninth and blah blah blah. I assume that's all just manager speak so they can trade him. But Hunter Strickland's a good guy to potentially trade if he can kind of stick in that role. I'm with you. Sir Anthony Dominguez is the guy that you want this week if you're looking at potential closers. If he wasn't taken last week, we would all like to see AJ Puck get the role because he's been great. He is a lefty, so that may work against him. He's also under team control, so that works against him with the A's. So yeah, Zach Jackson or Lou Trevino, unfortunately. Anybody on the waivers, Gray?
Yeah, there's some guys. I mean, we've talked about a couple before. Nick Senzel's actually been hot. He should. I mean, right now he's hitting in the bottom of the lineup, which kind of stinks. But if he can move up, that would be good. Hopefully he doesn't switch spots with Jonathan India. Let's see who else has been hot. Rafael Ortega's hit a little bit recently. He's been decent. He's been hot. I think Captain Bly Madras of the Pirates. He was hitting a little bit after his call up. So maybe there's something there. I think also Miguel Rojas has been somewhat hot. Something to look at. Alfonso Rivias on the Cubs. Taylor Trammell. Yeah, I mean, there's been a few guys. I think on the pitcher side, Chris Archer had a good start, but that was a good matchup I wouldn't really mess with him. Dylan Bundy, I mentioned him earlier in the show about how he had a good matchup last week. And I streamed Dylan Bundy for his good matchups because the streaming area was all about it. Now he's going to, I believe, Cleveland, and the streamer doesn't like it. And I think I'm still starring him. So sorry, Streaminator. But I think hopefully Dylan Bundy has made a turn for the better, and he's actually good versus a good matchup. And I don't even buy this as I'm saying it. So I wouldn't put too much weight on this. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't had one of those since like week 3, but yes, I think you can potentially start him this week. We'll check back next week to see if Gray or Rudy was right on Dylan Bundy's start in this week. I did want to mention former overall #1 pick Mark Appel is going to make his debut as a relief pitcher, so that's just something that I wanted to kind of throw out there because it's a guy that like we all thought was going to be good, and the entire baseball world thought he was going to be good, and he's making his debut at 30 after he retired last year. So that's good to see that he's coming back.
He's being played by Kevin Costner.
I wouldn't mind that. That'd be an interesting movie. I'd watch that. All right, great. Anything else to say before we get out of here?
Late.